There are some feminists, myself included, who have been arguing against Islamism for some years. And 5 years ago, I wrote a piece in the column in The Independent saying that I was indifferent to religion, and I particularly don't like the special status given to religious texts like the Bible and the Quran. And The Independent got hundreds of emails, mostly identical, but one of them from a man who signed himself Celtic Abdullah, threatened to blow up The Independent and burn me to death. So we felt that we actually had to go to the police, and I had a very memorable interview at the police station in Shepherd's Bush, where the first reaction was, well, what did you say to upset them? And I said, you know, I'm really glad I haven't been raped. And so that the next one was, we'll have to give this to the anti-terrorist branch. And I said, I think that's a really good idea. So then, a couple of days later, I was phoned by a cop, and he said, Miss Smith, I've looked at this email from Celtic Abdullah, and I don't see what your problem is. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, it's not racist, is it? And of course, he was absolutely right. It wasn't racist. It was actually threatening to kill me and to burn down The Independent. But it wasn't racist. So he said, I'm no criming it. So that was the beginning of a saga involving the Home Secretary and all sorts of people. And it just, everybody just kind of passed the buck to somebody else. But nobody wanted to investigate this man and why he wanted to kill journalists. So it is pretty tough. But anyway, we're still here. Can I know I've neglected this side of the panel. So can I ask you quickly, each of you, to just, we're actually over time, but if you could give us a couple of concluding sentences each, starting with Marie-Aimée.
Okay. I want to try and answer this very tricky question about minarets in Switzerland. I don't want to be cornered into being pro or against minarets, because that's not the question. The question is that the fight against minarets have been monopolized by the far right. Where was the left? Who was behind? I have a series of questions, basically. Who was demanding minarets? Which kind of political religious group? Were there other groups who voiced their intentions, whether they would need a minaret or not? Where were the women in that? How were the different groups' positions vis-à-vis one another? You know, whether Muslim believers or non-believers. So I think we need to go into details for such things. Otherwise, we end up with the right to veil or the right to FGM, which was a motto amongst feminists in the 70s. So that's quite problematic. And because fundamentalists have mastered the art of using and manipulating human rights concepts, I think it's not just as simple as going back to fundamental human rights. We have to see who speaks also and with what aim. Just one word about child abuse, because I really enjoyed that. And I think we should start considering that veiling girls at age 5, 6, or 10, or whatever, as part of a school uniform is child abuse, because it makes them interiorize that their bodies are responsible for male violence. And what does it do to the psyche of a girl? I'm very serious about that. I think we should take action against veiling these small girls. And just one word about human rights organizations. We had in Algeria during the 90s, about 200,000 victims, most of them at the hands of fundamentalists, not exclusively, but most of them. And certainly, most of the women who were killed by armed fundamentalists. Now, when I spoke about hierarchy of rights and hierarchy of victims, I wish you would go back to the annual reports of Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, for instance, and look at the number of pages devoted to violations committed by the state of Algeria at that time and fundamentalist armed forces. It's like 17 pages, 20 pages about state violations and 1.5 on other non-state actors' violations, and this is taking a political side.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to say last few words?
as I tried to suggest, there are different interpretations and understandings of multiculturalism. Some good, some bad. Some positive, some negative. Ironically, I would say that Iran would greatly benefit from a heavy dose of multiculturalism. If in Iran they could have multiculturalism, the good multiculturalism, the right to be different multiculturalism, the multiculturalism that respects universal human rights, that would be a very, very good progressive thing. It would mean there would be a space for the oppressed ethnic minorities, the Arabs, the Kurds, the Baluchis, the Azeris, and so on. It would mean there'd be a space for non-believers, as well as Sunni Muslims and Ahmadis and others who are persecuted in Iran because of their particular interpretation of Islam. So multiculturalism can, in some societies, in authoritarian societies, of the left and the right, can sometimes be a force for good. The final thing I just reiterate, to me, multiculturalism is fine. We shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but we have to add the very important caveat: multiculturalism is a good thing so long as it does not involve the diminution of the freedom of others. So long as it doesn't go into a cul-de-sac where we end up colluding with people who want to oppress others.
Thanks, and I think it's very fitting that the last word goes to Mariam Namazi.
Thank you. I think first I'd like to ask Peter, please don't import multiculturalism to Iran, export it to Iran. We have enough problems. But I mean, I think that, obviously it is important that we all have different, the ability to promote difference and to show our difference. But I think that is not necessarily multiculturalism, and that is not what multiculturalism means today. And therefore, I think we must stand up against it with full force. I think if we are going to solve some of our many problems, from faith schools to the ghettoization of whole communities and handing them over to Islamist movements, and if we're going to be able to move away from the fragmentation of people and dividing them into Bantustans with lesser rights and lesser norms and standards applying to them, the racism of lower expectations. If we're going to stop doing that, it is important to look multiculturalism and culturalism head on and say no to it. And I think, the other side of it is demanding citizenship rights and the right, and a human being, whatever beliefs or culture or religions they have or don't have, that they are human beings. And I think that will actually turn things back in the right and proper place and give people the respect and the equality that they deserve, and not cultures and religions. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a long session, and I think you've heard a huge range of subjects covered. I mean, obviously, we could have gone on for quite a lot longer, but I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for contributing to this, but also thank you in the audience for listening and contributing your own ideas to what is a very important debate. And I think it's very good that we're finally able to have this debate in this country. So thank you all, and thank everyone on the panel.